Ooh, didn't feel good this morning. Still don't feel that great. And the thing that I want to talk about is that even if Christianity is a joke on all of us, and we know all about Jesus and his real name being Isis and the whole story, and if you ever looked at or read the Jesus family tomb, there's always going to be speculation that leads back to the Knights Templar and the modern day Mason producing an artifact such as Jesus to manipulate the masses. But there is a cross there. There's a cross because this pure son and the acknowledgement of this pure son's existence, whether at some point in time that wasn't 2,000 years ago, or like Ralph Ellis likes to, postulate, and he's done a lot of work on this. Michael Tessarian backs him up, that it was more like 50 years later, 30 to 50 years later, when all these events can be matched up. Of course, Neil from Gnostic Informant, he's stuck on his own crusade and on his own cross, so to speak, at the crossroads, that is. And, battling with people like brilliant writers like Jason Reza Georgiani, who takes everything back to modern Iran, and even more so reaches back into the Persian, which he claims was not Persia at the time, but has its footing, its heritage in Iran. And that Neil and Jason Reza Georgiani still contend that Amon Hillman is still a scholar that they wish to do dealings with. Right? Sorry, I have something in my throat. But nevertheless, you could see people coming to this holy, it's been called different things, but like this, it's not necessarily this catharsis or a metanoia, but a holy shit moment, right? For lack of a better. To say that people of the left-hand path even come to the understanding that, of course, Jesus has to exist. A pure son, people have to believe in this. It makes that adrenochrome taste even better. Or it makes, the abuse of these young women who are turned to prostitutes quite willfully through our organization, that we can do anything we want to as we dump tons of money back into the Shriners hospitals. And then, we know how to illuminate. We know how to sort of ride the drift and keep the ether floating. Without that Jesus, nobody would be turning to that, right? But then you have those to the right. If there really is a right. But those that really try to embrace true piety, that oftentimes follow the writings of and get lost on the way, like John D. Those who were really looking into this and were of the left-hand path, probably wanted to be saved, wanted to see some sort of proof. And that's the whole point, is that there is no proof until it works through you, until it happens through you. But those of the right would say, there has to be a pure son. A figure like Jesus has to have existed, regardless of what the name was, or someone pretty close to this, who realized, came to this place, the higher man, if you will, the Ubermensch, to say that Friedrich Nietzsche wasn't anti-Christ or anti-Christian. He was more Christian than the Christians. He was saying, look, I'll base my name on it. I'll base my whole career on it, right? That this Ubermensch has to come to be. And it's not going to be the most superior physical male, right? And neither intellectual, but somebody who's entirely apart and separate. And really because of the ground that they choose no ground. It's not somebody who's noble and who will die for the cross, you know, the man-made cross, the iron cross, die for the king, die for the queen, right? It's not nobility. It's not patriotism. It's that there would be such a pure, true person or persona, individual in existence, that proves that it can be done, right? And that if any of us are trying, we're that much closer. We're one step closer to creating this environment. And so this creates a volley and a rally back and forth still. All the games are based on this, you know, from tennis to cricket and all the other, the fox hunts. All the games are based around this. The holy, you know, the royal order of the jesters, the Knights of Malta. All these names are to poke fun at, but to say, no, we need Christians. We need devout followers. And we have to follow, right? We have to follow. We come to the conclusion that we are human, and that even if we posit and posture giants and their existence, right, that the Masons most likely brought them down, and that if they were to bring them down, and that if the artifices of these, you know, the progenitors of these giants were those who were of the inner earth, and we're suffering already, suffering of eternal damnation and an eternal life sort of scenario, right? Where they're just constantly sick. They never really age, but they have a poor life quality. Well, this is kind of what's being pointed at. Is that these are the people who took a vow that are even called like the offspring of the Nephilim. Some say the Raphaim, right? To where you have the occupation and the arbitrary attempt to embody these people and intermix them with those who are of the right-hand path. I've always been one that just doesn't give a shit and has seen everything. And I was forced to give a shit. We all are. That's the whole point. That sort of a crass, neutral observer is a really popular notion, you know. But, you know, sort of this not an anti-hero, but an anti-hero. Somebody who sort of comes before the hero. Someone who could have been the hero, but they just saw the whole thing too clearly to fall for that trap. That they realize they're just being sucked in. So you got to understand that this type of intellectual tapestry and understanding, where it is a very complex game, where they can show up at any time, they know your next move, they know what you'll do, I mean, it's a procession of the stars in the sense that they remade it. They created a computational subset that's based on a computational pattern that they recreated. Probably by destroying this Maldek, or Malzek, can't remember. I think it's Maldek, the planet that was closer toward Mars, I believe, and created the asteroid belt, right? And erected and towed in the moon that might be just super, super old. It might have just gotten some brushwork done over it. And, you know, when they say, like, Lucifer and equate that to the grand architect of the universe, you know, they probably do hail a very ancient mind that figured things out a long, long time ago. And you can't remove the crazy hypothesis of biblical structure. You can't refute it. But you also see all the contradictions in there. It's a black book. It's full of contradictions, right? It's meant to. So that if you are of the left-hand path, you will get a completely different message when you read a passage than you will the right-hand path. You'll be attracted toward completely different scriptures. It will resonate with you. You can't make words resonate with you that aren't of you, right? And this does get into how we are all manipulated through language models, right? To think that there is, like I said, an arbitrary aspect to everything where it's just like, no, here's your 26, letters to the alphabet. LMN, right? And then O are very distinctly separate. Very distinctly separate. And they are used over and over again, and they're used in charting systems. And they also represent the womb, the monad. You'll see it right in front of every Masonic hall. So it is very, very crucial that we look at this, and that this also becomes implicit as to what is really considered the plebeian, the average everyday person's alphabet and dialectic, that we don't use we don't use the thousands of words through etymology and nomenclature that are available. Most of us don't even want to learn them, much less computer languages and hybrid languages that are heavily encrypted, that people can't even understand, and that require supercomputers and probably quantum computers just to be able to decipher codes. But this is the type of shit John Dee was working on way, way back in the day, right? So there are, just like amino acids, there's your essentials and there's your conditionally essentials, right? And it all depends on what's available. And you better believe that it's not just a circumstance or a happenstance that Cain and Abel represent, two complete dichotomies of dietary solutions that exist today. I mean, it seems like such a slight, like, I think I'll be carnivore today, or I'll be, right, vegan. But once everything comes down to principle, and you will do whatever it takes to be carnivore or vegan, and you understand that you are standing for what the totality of that expression means, that these animals will be sacrificed, that you're more than okay with that, right? So I live a complete contradiction, because I'm not anything that I can express through a carnivore dietary solution and even more so, how we are filtered through desperation to arrive at such notions. You know, they want us to eat those sacrificed animals. They make it quite affordable. What could be easily more affordable to eat vegan, vegetarian, and to be trained. Like, that's the kind of shit we should be learning in school, is how to eat, what nutrients are, you know, the colors of different vegetables, the seasonal aspect to it. We should all be masters at that, horticulture, and, you know, we should understand this whole thing, but we don't. We're not taught that. We're not taught anything that's practical. Can you imagine how fewer hip replacements, shoulder surgeries and replacements, rotator cuff, lower back, knees, ankles, just if biomechanics were taught? Just simple planes of motion. Just, this is your body, this is how it works. Instead, you walk out of school confused as to which sex you are. And you continue on as every fucking movie you watch does the same mind trip, the same bullshit into everyone's psyche, right? Well, those Masons, those Shriners, they've taken a vow. They know who they want to be. They know who they are. And like what L. Ron Hubbard, the gibberish that people thought he was writing, they've quite been inviting exactly what is alluded to. But it's not some characterization of a fantasy. But there's a lot of fantasy involved in it, because that's what romanticism is, that leads directly to absurdism as an antidote. There is no antidote. Romanticism is to romanticize something that was a hostile sexual assault, that affected someone karmically, that affected them deeply, changed who they were, so that upon re-embodiment, and then forced re-embodiments, red rite rituals, there's some seriously fucked up things going on here. And for us to even talk about this and all the damage we've incurred, right, and to have an awareness of this, it's a testament to all of us. But we need to clarify this. We need to stop hiding from it. It's a very uncomfortable subject, and it never goes away. Every movie's about this. Every bite we take. I mean, yeah, it's I'm a buzzkill, right? Whoever really talks about the factual nature of this, the ontology, the fact that nature has been disturbed, nature is being raped by these people that are running and functioning society in the most dysfunctional way. They're tied into the WEF. They go much deeper than that. They're tied into the Knights of Malta. They go back through historical archives. This was a long-running plan. It's not some genius plan. They even had to remake us and engineer us to their likeness, modify us, shrink us, reduce us, isolate us to only a certain portion of the light spectrum, uneducate us, right? Block us from the knowing, even of the compass and the square, to where if you went on one side or the other, you will be overcome by demonic entities. And we can only call them demons, but the truth is that it's just evil spirits. Evil spirits are all around us. And they're able to do things to you with their minds. And even more so, they get lazy and complacent because entities can act through them. They're an open highway system. They're used to it. These are men like Benjamin Franklin, the Hellfire Club. It was long before the inception of this. My family that came over here that I've talked about before on the Palatine is like the third or fourth or fifth trip. I think there were 5 trips altogether in 1726 or 1728 is when the Marstellers came here from Pfungstadt. And the reason that these Germans left Germany was because of a war that went on for 100 years that was sparked by, guess it, witchcraft. That is the reason. People like to scoff at it and laugh about it. And what is that really? What is witchcraft? It's when somebody or something is acting upon you and you can't explain from where it comes from, and results are happening. Kids are dying, water jugs are spilling over and dropping and breaking, people are being psychically raped, right? What does this sound like to you? It's remote viewing. This is all the shit the CIA is involved in. This country's been evil from the beginning, and we'd be hard pressed to say that every country wasn't. They spread their virus out. You know? They spread their virus out. And they were doing it back in the 1670s, 1666, I think it was. Right around that time. When you take it back to this country's origin, that's when it was first being plotted, you know, and planned. And it's no, wonder you got your 13 colonies. You have the battle between the North and the South, right? And my family actually ended up falling on the Confederate side, right? Why would they put General Custer, a 23-year-old knucklehead, right? Why would they put him in charge? Why would they do that? Got to really think about this kind of shit. History is created, it's fabricated. They're having fun with it. They're not out of control right now. This whole thing with Trump's just another idiot. He knows what's happening. This Abramovich witch, calling him the most, what is a witch going to do? If a witch is acting antithetically or at war, this long-standing, long-running war with these druids, of course she's going to stroke Trump's ego, because that makes him want to fall closer to the witch's order. And when you look at his wife, you got to take a look at her and tell me she is not a witch. Melania Trump. I've even looked up her family and her name, and it is scary. Do a deep dive yourself and check it out. She is a dark, dark person. And Trump's family heritage is very mysterious. It's bizarre. It kind of sort of is Russian. It kind of sort of maybe it could have German origins. But it actually is a very confusing lineage. He can't just trace his lineage back like a lot of people. Do you realize that? Like, he was fabricated. It was that John Trump. How did he get seated and put into such a position, right? To be considered one of these top leading minds, but just happened to slip under the radar to where he was right there receiving Nikola Tesla's information, even being one of the main people, right, that intercepted it. 4.5 truckloads of information. Look at Tesla. Look what happened to the guy. You could tell the guy was just under major attacks, but still, he was living in peace. He was trying to figure out how to save reality. He's trying to figure out how to hack into the ether, right? But it fried him. The code fried him. He thought there was a way. And everyone who stood up against it is psychically raped and made insane, put down, right? So there's got to be a better way, but I don't see any solutions. And the only thing you can do, really, and where they brought this, is you come to the cross. Even if it was heavily orchestrated, you got to understand that if you were to lock the most diabolical, evil genius into a room and say, you're not going to come out until we are 100% absolutely certain that you came out with the answer. And then they do the same thing over here with someone to the right who wants nothing but purity. Nothing but, I don't even want to use the wrong words, but one who believes in utter faith knows that faith and free will is that freedom that we're given. They know it. Gnosis. That's what gnosis is. They've gone through the metanoia. They've gone through the catharsis. And then you have someone over here who's realized themselves fully as an agent of evil. That is nothing but a conduit for the most vile evil spirits to be able to portal through from anywhere, any time, any place, any dimension, any zone. This is Scientology. This is Hinduism, I hate to tell you. Although there are some great things seemingly involving Hinduism, this is animism. Because when you're talking about things of this earth and an equality and an egalitarian focus, you got to understand that your ontology is missing a lot of species of critters and creatures and life forms and entities that you are not omitting from that animistic and Neoplatonic subset. So pantheism is not something that you want to follow. You can't just simply go by whatever's on the table and say those are the only foods that exist, when there is a cornucopia of other entities. So they would both walk out of that room having that aha moment and coming to the cross. The left-hand path would say, this is the best area to completely, solidify any coup d'etat that we have. It's already been done. We give them their God. And as they believe, as these little children are praying, that's when we snatch them up. And we laugh at them. And even more so, all that belief, it makes that adrenochrome taste so much better. It makes those tears taste better, right? And from the right-hand path, it is, yes, there has to be a pure son. There has to be a top contender that either has existed at some point, the closest to this. There must have been somebody who came, and then they look at the stories. They look at the folklore. And many of the stories are thrown in there, right? Like, you have this Herculean character in David, right? David and Goliath. Solomon. Look how he's hailed. Look at how interoperable Solomon is between both sides. Look at how it's infused in the Bible. What about Abraham and Abrahamic traditions, or Sarah, and like Jordan Maxwell talked about, like the Saraswati River, all these things. It doesn't even matter if they were real people, because when you see them as tribes, it means the same thing. It's an energy. So when principalities are suggested, that's what this is. And when one man stands up, when one man says, as vile and evil as I was born to be, manufactured to me to be, I refuse to do any more of these acts. That is the coming to the cross moment. That you're willing to die on that hill. I mean, that's what that means. Golgotha, right? You're willing to die on that hill. So when you read Rudolf Steiner, when you listen to Rudolf Steiner, this is exactly what Rudolf Steiner is talking about. And it seems hokey to a lot of people, right? It makes esotericism look like a joke until you've gone through some really wild shit, right? And Screw Tape Letters, C.S. Lewis. If you never read it, I suggest reading it. At first, you might kind of chuckle and think this is a simple prospect. Wait until you go through some weird ass experiences in your life, and you're going to cling to that book. You'll cling to that book. So people are trying to describe this in a myriad of different ways, but the only thing that it can be called, and near Jordan Maxwell's, some of his last interviews, and he was mocked. He was mocked, heavily mocked. And he was attacked from the inside out. Many people saw him as a charlatan. They were discussing him as such. They weren't, I knew the time would come back in 2020, 2019, 2020. I could see what was going to happen. I was listening to, YouTube was full of people mocking Jordan Maxwell. People were hiding cameras and trying to, trick him into taking a free meal. And it was terrible. Calling him an uneducated idiot, this and that, He was really put through it. And all he was trying to do is get the fire going, get the fire started. But nobody was on his side. Nobody was on the same side. Even David Icke, very much separated himself from that whole thing. Right? He had his business going. He had his little franchise going. Right? He's kind of compromises and goes, well, I brought out these 7 points, these 7 principles that are brought up over and over again. That's good enough. Well, I'm not taking anything away, and I am speculating whether or not I call them reptilians or, that's my own franchisable way of describing it. Until you see these kind of egregore, tulpa apports begin to appear. They're like, we'll play with that. We'll play with that. And that's when you begin to see people like Ted Rice saying that he's having these experiences, and nobody believes him either. And he's on his last leg. It's just hard to tell what's real, what's fiction, what's fantasy. You want to stand behind it, but you just can't. And then when these people die, they're somehow immortalized. But it's much easier to amalgamate what they're saying and then sway it toward a certain belief system, isn't it? To adopt it, to own it. Trust me, I felt very passionately about this. I was so pissed off back in 2018, that I actually listened to an interview with Jordan Maxwell, and he was talking about how his namesake was stolen and this person was stalking him and this and that. And I started to do some research, and I found this person. I found him. And I sent him some scathing emails, and he got right back to me. And he goes, you see this? I will send you all the court papers. He signed off his namesake. He signed off his whole business to me. So what he's saying in that interview, and soon after that, he didn't say a thing. He signed his whole name off, and he wasn't threatened, I don't believe. I don't think it was anything violent. Right? Something else happened, because his name is Russell Pine. Or he was blackmailed. Or that, he never really talked about where Russell Pine never talked about really where he came from. Or things that happened, or, maybe there was some shame involved. I don't know. But he's just human. And he tried. He tried to take on up that cross and stand for something. He could have done other things. He was convicted. And every person in the Bible is depicted as such. That is the New Testament, right? And the disciples, that it's heavily correlated to the Old Testament. And the 12 tribes of Israel, and there's like this whole witchcrafty thing. Very witchcrafty. Fucking scepters and shit like this. Come on, staffs. Swords. These are all things that are depicted even in my coat of arms for my family through von Marsteller, which I can trace back to 1096. A crusader. A fucking crusader with a coat of arms. a sword and a lion. And then on my other grandfather's side, that's not Marsteller, the last name Leon. Something trippy going on there, you know? So, this entire thing is bizarre. This whole thing's strange. And to really align yourself with an ideology or a belief system isn't enough. You have to do the impossible and go by utter faith. And the only thing left, the thing you'll want to refute and you'll get sick of hearing and you'll grow bored and you'll realize this is getting in my way, this is a buzzkill. I understand. I get it. But after the experiences that I've had, going in that direction and going, yeah, this is all bullshit, guess what? It's not. It's not bullshit. There are the highest esteemable factors exist. They exist. And you're going to have to get in sync with the entirety of who you are and what you stand for. And it's not of this earth. It's not on this earth. And that's something that when you get into the readings of the Zarathustra, when you get into that whole thing, it's a trip. Because young Sadi, from some depictions, some writings, he was trained to be a keeper, a noble keeper of the noble horses, right? Raising them for nobility. And this woman comes out of nowhere and discusses with his father that it's time for him to be trained in other ways. We're going to take him now. We know it's hard. We know you're doing the best you can, but a lot is left out there. Like when you talk about this witchcraft, I mean, they'll do this mental mind warfare. Maybe they made things really hard for him. Maybe they made people die around him, right? Maybe they made some serious hardship, burned some barns down, right? So there's so many factors left out of these stories. But the witchcraft is always there. And whatever enters these women, I mean, it's the same thing with Gardner, Wicca, right? You have a man who is a warlock. Any man who is practicing witchcraft is a warlock. This happened with my uncle. When I went down there to Pasadena, I was starting that story again, my last video. When I went down there to Pasadena 15 years ago, my uncle who just passed away, I was introduced to some of his friends through very bizarre circumstances. As we're driving up there, there's this guy. My uncle says, "You ever heard of this guy? Wow, he's all the way up here. That's a trip. There's a sign for you." The guy's carrying a cross up into the mountains. Way up in the mountains. Skinny, huffing and puffing, pulling that cross up the hill. Right, on a wooden cross, on a roller, a wheel that I'm sure he had to replace. Probably had nothing but wheels in his pocket. And he had to rely on people's hospitality, I'm sure. It was crazy. It was right at the turn. And as we're turning in there, I know, I stayed in the car for a while, but I know something there was to protect me. And it was a friend that had disappeared, and lo and behold, there he was. He was turns out he was a high-level wizard. That's what they were discussing. They're all into the witchcraft, all into the satanic shit, all into the wizardry trip. right down there in Pasadena, walking down the same streets as John Parsons, right? Aleister Crowley, right where all that shit was taking place, all that thelemic bullshit, right? So I mean, when you're talking about this, it's a network, it's a matrix. We want to have this feeling that everything is so far removed, but it's not that far removed. They want us to think there's 8 billion people, and by Lee's Real Talk, right? Which I think she's a total plant, but whether she is or not, there's ways to control people and to communicate, right? And by her standards, there's even 350 million people in China is probably exaggerated, greatly exaggerated. So, I mean, however many people are on the planet right now, it's really hard to say, but even 8 billion, it's not as many as you think. When you have the origin, and of course we're all related. Of course we're not removed as we think we are. I mean, look at all the things that are happening these days, like there's obviously a lot going on that we are, we feel comfortable acknowledging, right? Where things are so carnal, things are always going back to this Ouroboros and this samsara and this returning cyclical wheel. We're not bound to it. That's what they want us to think. We're not bound to the nutrition and the diet, but just like that man who's carrying the cross all over America, up into the hills, he was in the right place at the right time, every step, every drop of sweat. Can you imagine the miles before where he's like, I just got to get here. I got to get here. I got to get here. I'm being led. I'm carrying this cross and I'm being led to reach this intersection at this time. And imagine that, where it all comes to him, as the endorphins are going through his body, and maybe he's a half mile up the road or a mile up the road, and it just comes to him, and it's like, I can see why I was there, and I didn't even have to turn around, right? And there's those moments of deliverance. And that's the network, that's the matrix that you can allow to happen in your life. Now, yeah, there's a lot of bad preachers. There's a lot of bad services going on. There's a lot of greed, right? But the answers are both found in the Bible, in the Black Book, and they're also found inside you, right? And you have to, just like in the world, you have to, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy. It's not a perfect book. Maybe the perfection of it is the fact that it's written in such an imperfect way that it lives in a realm, right? It's a living book that lives in a realm that is of both the right and the left. It's a divider. It's saying, if you believe this, then this is how you see me. If you believe this, this is how you see me. So you would say it's the same God. It's a unified God, and this gets into the areas of abraxas, where thinking about abraxas, or this homogenized force, I don't believe is the answer. God isn't a jealous God, right? Their God is a jealous God. Right? Just like jealousy actually works. People who are jealous of other people, it can hurt you when they're jealous of you and they're so infatuated with you that they can't take their minds off of you. You know what I'm talking about? And they're the ones winning, because then they start to poke holes in you when it's happening. And then you have to become resolute and say, wow, I'm not as pure as I'm posturing myself to be, or that I think I am. I'm not doing the things, but they are doing the evil. but they truly think they're good. And that is the best description of evil, is that they see reality for what it is, right? That's how they see reality. So that's when I came to the principles of EPL, esoteric principles of light. And I realized there has to be two sides. And there has to be neutral principles that can go, or sub principles that can act on either side. Like a dog, like a canine. They'll go to war with you for nobility, right? They'll also attack somebody and tear their throat out when you're trying to murder people. Okay? They just want to please you. And particularly when it's patternized, how they're raised, the information that's input. I mean, they're hellhounds for the computational system. But I believe in divinity. I truly do. And I know that most people just laugh at it. And I know Cliff High is one of those people, but he's getting older now. And, I pray for him. I know he's being taken for a ride. I know what it looks like. And I truly pray for his release. Right? And sometimes that doesn't look so pretty. I know he's grieving. You don't just get over your wife who passes away, but the corporeal pursuits are not the answer. Part of us, in fact, maybe all of us, really, in truth, is a child. Just trying to express ourselves, just trying to be loved. Right? And when we can get back to that, I mean, the guy carrying that cross, I hate to even use Tom, whatever his name is, from Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks, yeah. I've erased him out of my mind, so it's like, he's such an evil, strange person. If you ever see that video of him playing with himself on Bosom Buddies and what he was doing on Bosom Buddies, look really closely, think again. Look at how their careers are launched. Really look at it closely. See it for truth. Let me make a second cup of tea here. So we're getting a nice walk in. And I wasn't planning on walking, but I am. I'm doing it. I'm carrying my cross. I've got extra time. In 2013, all these witches in my family were surprised to see me. They had all heard the voice. And they were making the sacrifice. And they all had a feeling, and they came looking for me or calling me. They knew that I had died. But what happened is that I was saved. I was saved. And I haven't been all that faithful or all that great, but I've been trying to factor through it. And I came out of this with those principles, EPL, esoteric principles of light, and those aren't perfect. But I came out with the tenets and what they mean to me. And it means something that John Frusciante said that always stuck with me. And something my son said a couple weeks ago that stuck with me. And we'll stick with him. And John Frusciante said that we all need to develop our own religion. But strikingly, when you look at things like the cross, objects, intersections, junction points, but very specific. When you look at the Star of David, when you look at what happened to the Star of David, when you're looking at the tree of life, the flower of life, right? We have the tree of life with the fork of four on the bottom. In addition, the banking industry, right? The things that corrupt and destroy our culture, our society, the law that's placed over us. None of that is in the original principles. And so I began to look at that, and I realized there's two halves of a coin. There are principles and there are anti-principles. And I found the principles not because they're present here in this world, but because they're not. I put together the principles with EPL based on the order in my own life, what I observed. I put a lot of time and thought into this. Deep contemplation. A lot of prayer, you'd say. Definitely. A lot of hardships that I chose. I chose to walk a path when I had such an easy life awaiting me. But the Masons made themselves known. They interviewed me. They came out of nowhere. The powers, or the quasi-powers, and the realization left me awestruck and went on for many, many days until I was finally faced with a ritual that was very well planned. And it was a point of contention. It was an induction ceremony. And the faces that I saw and the experiences that I had right around my son's birthday. And I needed to be there for him. And I gave up a career for him. And I burned a lot of YouTube videos that would have made me very rich for him. 350 videos that I just burned away. Before and after videos. Me doing natural training as a top fitness trainer, award-winning fitness trainer. Just perfecting my physique, perfecting the form, showing it, showing the hardship, showing the struggle, showing the walks and the training. And they would have been online for the past 18 years. 2007. Movies. Then when I thought, I've got to do something about this. I got to step my game up. After almost 41 years of being natural, I went and educated myself and began to dabble with, play with, but as strictly as I possibly could, right? Stacking PEDs on top of each other and filming that, putting everything I had into it. Heavy squats, heavy presses, just pressing that iron out, using everything I had, right? I had an archive, a solid archive. I wouldn't have needed to make one more video. I just needed to leave them. But my son was being tortured with schizophrenia. And every time an episode would flare up, it's when I was working on, I might not have seen him for sometimes weeks at a time. He was kept from me, and then the police were called on me. And I was trying to be as close by. I was trying to be there for him. I wasn't going to let him be sacrificed. And I went into spiritual warfare because the police were being called on me, because I was being cancel cultured, because I had left my $100,000 a year job knowing what was the most important. Deceiving myself, trying to deceive myself, and realizing that other person doesn't even exist. It took me a long time to realize that. and it's a seed of love. Love is real. It's something that through free will, that's what gives you free will. Is that exercise, that display, not a play, not a stage play, not a performance. See, we got all these words that are very confusing, and they're meant to be. An act where you don't get any credit. No one looks up to you. There's no big party. There's no payoff. Everyone thinks you're nuts. Everyone thinks you're a loser. And those aren't the people that you're listening to on podcasts today. Do you realize that? I know nobody's listening. That's why I don't even look down I have my phone upside down. I never even look down when I do these talks. It's real, it's candid, and it's in moments like this. Like, I put together the numerology. I know that July 22nd today means catch 22. I figured this out many, many years ago. I know what 21 means. It's the top number to phi or phi, the Fibonacci sequence, the golden mean. Then it just goes on repeats after that. And you want to be able to repeat that number subset at 34 with the same accuracy as you did for all prior numbers. It's a machine, it's a Merkaba. I figured this stuff out and have been writing about it for years. And then other people, once you put something out into the field, other people exploit it. They're just coming on to information that seems to make sense in sort of an epistemological, systematic way. But all they're thinking about is how to sell books, how to get rich. The moment you make a dime off of it, and it's very strange, because you have real men of faith on both sides. Even Albert Pike died broke, right? Karl Marx. If you really look back in history, all of them knew that that man money, buying into this, tying themselves into the bullshit, was absolutely not real. You can't be part of the illusion. So you have those of the left and those of the right who are almost indistinguishable. You almost can't tell them apart. Thomas Aquinas, David Hume, Spinoza, the piety, the John D. hieroglyphic monad. When you look at it, it's like, yes, this is the number system. You agree with it on the right? Yes. You agree with this on the left? This is it. This is the Holy Cross. You agree with the pure sun? Oh, yes, on the right. Yes, on the left, with an evil grin. It's just the people that call themselves the Grand Masters and need those titles. The other ones understand that it's a cosmic play, and that it just comes down to one person at the end of the dominoes falling. Even though every domino prior to is pressing on that domino's back, the last domino doesn't get hit, and it can withstand the wind, and it has to decide through free will, am I going to fall and create this actionable deed, or am I going to stand? None of those dominoes can do a damn thing. They all fell. No harsh wind is going to come about. In the end, it's just that one pure sun making that last and final decision. And in this world, there's no love. There's void. It is void of love. In our free will, and the only thing that displays free will is love. That's it. And love's not what you think it is, by the way. You've been tainted. Think about every other principle. You've been tainted. No, you'd have to really do some deep soul searching. And guess what? when you came out of that dark black teepee, right? When you finally emerged from that hut, when you came out of that, broke out of that mud hut, you'd get run over and railroaded. You'd feel every bit of evil around you. You'd become ultra sensitive. Because that's what perfection is. Your nervous system would be as if it was just naked to every impulse, every thought, every action, every deed. That is the goal. And you could not exist around others. And you would be joining in to a unification, glory, the pure sun. You would be able to at least know that, like it said in the Nag Hammadi, all things go back into their roots. So the biggest question is, who are you?